Hi, everyone. This is Freedom Warrior Woman, independent researcher and microscopy photographer at unhackableanimal at substack.com. In this first video, I am going to do an overview of nanomaterials and how I believe that is related to the transhumanist synthetic biology and human augmentation agenda that is underway, and hoping that this is a good introduction and overview for those of you who are new to the subject. I am going to show and explain a little bit about fibers and filaments, but I'm going to go way more in depth in the second video. So in part 2, I'm going to show you a lot of photographs and videos of my new and revised field guide to nanos, or what I'm calling nanotechnology assembled structures and processes. So thanks so much for watching.
Humans are now hackable animals. The whole idea that humans have, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. Today, we have the technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. Surveillance. People could look back in 100 years and identify the coronavirus epidemic as the moment when a new regime of surveillance took over, especially surveillance under the skin, is this ability to hack human beings, to go under the skin, collect biometric data, analyze it. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because we are about to enter a new era of inorganic life shaped by intelligent design.
First of all, people often ask me, what kind of microscope do I use? And I have an old retired Olympus CX41. This microscope came with phase contrast and light field, but I added a dark field condenser and I primarily work in dark field. And my magnification is 100, 200, 400, and 1,000 times. So what I do is I attach my DSLR Canon camera lens to the microscope eyepiece and photograph in large, raw digital files to capture the maximum detail, and then I improve the images in Photoshop. First of all, what is visible with an optical microscope? People often say, well, you can't see nanoscale, you can't see nanotechnology, you can't see nanoparticles or nanostructures with an optical microscope. And that's true because nanoscale is from 1 to 100 nanometers. So for example, there are 1 billion nanometers in 1 meter, or 1 million nanometers in a millimeter. And so the measurement of a micron equals 1,000 nanometers. So for example, under an optical microscope, we can see bacteria and we can see red blood cells and things bigger than that. Red blood cells are about 7,000 nanometers in size. Anything less than 100 nanometers is visible only by an electron microscope, although some nanoparticles are classified as being up to 2,500 nanometers in size. So many people haven't even heard of nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is a huge trillion-dollar industry that involves biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, medicine, and electronic communications to control and program matter at the atomic and molecular scale. And scientists all over the world, especially in universities, are working at this scale with equipment that can manipulate molecules to build structures and behave in a certain way. In this case, they took carbon nanotubes, and with the help of a Tesla coil, they were able to basically conduct electricity, which could have all sorts of electronic and biomedical applications. And often these nanoparticles are employed still at the nanoscale, and they have a lot of applications. Some of them are supposedly for the benefit of humankind and the earth. Quite honestly, I think a lot of them are just unnecessary applications. And then you have dark military projects. In the United States, the U.S. National Nanotechnology Initiative has been going since 2000, and it involves about 25 different programs, including the Department of Defense and the FDA and the Forest Service and the DoD and the DOJ and NASA and almost every agency in the United States government somehow utilizes nanotechnology. The agency behind all of this is really DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which has a very dark past and it has some very clandestine projects. And each year, the president signs a new initiative transferring billions of dollars to research and development. So once again, these nanoparticles are on a nanoscale, and some of them are polymer-based, some of them are lipid-based, some of them are made out of metal nanoparticles and carbon nanotubes and quantum dots and silica. So these nanoparticles can be programmed in the laboratory to activate, to move, to behave, they grow, to solidify, to self-repair, to self-replicate, or even transmit data in response to certain physical environmental exposures, such as when they come in contact with liquid or your blood, certain kinds of lights, with air, with temperature, changes in pH, changes in ionic strength, enzymes, ultrasound radiation, plasmonic resonance, which are electrons excited by light wavelengths, or electric currents, magnetic fields, and most importantly, EMFs. Here are some nanostructures at the nanoscale, photographed with an electron microscope. And you can see there's a lot of diversity in these nanoparticles and nanomaterials in the different shapes and how they can build upon themselves. There's nanospheres and nanorods and nanotriangles and nanotetrahedrons and octopods and nanosnowflakes and nanotrees and nanoskeletons and nanoboxes. And these are the building blocks for the nanotechnology to grow into microstructures. Here is a graphic of how peptides self-assemble into a triple helix form, and they stick to other triple helixes to create a nanofiber. And then that eventually becomes something that looks like a hydrogel that's visible to the naked eye. Let's take a closer look, shall we? If you have your own microscope, you can do this, or you can go to someone who is a live blood analysis, and it's a quick, painless little prick of your finger with a lancet, and you get a drop or two of blood on a slide. You can see all sorts of things, including red blood cells and contamination, anything that shouldn't be there, and the general health of the blood. Here's a video showing a sample of my blood, which is relatively healthy. And you can see the red blood cells here under dark field look purple with a white glow around them. That's because I'm using dark field, and the angle of the light gives the glowing effect of objects. So here's another image of my blood taken under light field. It's a totally different look. You can see the blood cells there. They're starting to decompose. But what is this giant, crazy, translucent, worm-like structure in my blood? Well, you might think it's some sort of parasite, but it's not a parasite. It's a synthetic filament. It's not organic. It's not natural. It's one of these nanotechnology assembled structures. And where it's coming from is this hydrogel smart material that is building this filament. These are not air bubbles. This is a membraned capsule of hydrogel material that is busy making this filament, which has grown in my blood from nanoparticles that I have inhaled or ingested into my body. These are actually very common now to find in people. Here's another image of my blood taken in dark field. Again, you can see the background is really black and the blood cells are all clumped together because once again, they've been sitting on the slide for quite a while as I was doing this photography. This synthetic fiber is blue, which is also very common. And we don't know why there are different colors of these fibers and filaments, that the nanoparticles have been doped with heavy metals or chemicals to make them a certain color. This is also not unusual to find in blood these days. Here are some samples of urine of fibers and filaments that have naturally come out of the body without any detoxing. You can see there are purple ones, there are blue ones, there are translucent ones. The one on the far left that kind of looks like a monster, it's very kind of thick, and that is because the hydrogel is clinging to the sides of the filament and building it. The one on the bottom you can see has some little purple bubble looking things on the outside. Once again, that is hydrogel. It's either coming out of the fiber or it's being attached to it to help build it. So these polymer fibers, filaments, and ribbons, they vary in color, size, texture, structure, and material composition. Here is an assortment of different ones that I've photographed over all of my samples. And as you can see, some of them, like the one at the top, the blue one, it looks like it has a little face and a mouth. But as you can see, they really vary in their structure and composition. And the difference between what we call a fiber and a filament and a ribbon is just how they look. Fibers generally have a lot of texture in them. They look like rope and they have a tasseled end, whereas filaments are more like rice noodles, translucent, you can't see much. And we call them ribbons if they fold on themselves. And sometimes we find these really sparkly, glittery ones that clearly have some technology in them. I'm going to show you more examples and talk more about these fibers in part 2. So a question I get a lot is, are these just microplastics? Is this just waste in the environment? Microplastics are a really big thing right now in studies and reporting, and they're generally referred to the degrading polymer plastic fragments from pollution, from product packaging and industrial processes that are moving around the environment, and they get lodged in all sorts of things like animals in the ocean and in our bodies. Well, how did they get there? Obviously, they have to be small enough to cross the blood-brain barrier. Are these microplastics waste, or are they primary sources of nanomaterials that have assembled over time? As you can see from this graphic, fibers is one of the microplastic objects that they find. And you can also see the polymers that make up these plastics are the same polymers that are used in nanotechnology and synthetic biology.
In Avengers Infinity War, Iron Man reveals a new suit that almost seems to grow and form around him as he walks. He then says, "Like it? It's nanotech." This got me thinking. By this point, we are using nanotechnology in many different areas and in many different ways. So what exactly was it doing to our environment? Remember, everything's connected, so all of the amazing things that nanotechnology can do are also connected to its potential for disaster. There are an estimated 2,000 consumer products on the market that use nanoparticles, and yet there are no regulations on their commercial usage at all. Additionally, the FDA and CDC do not have any sort of pre-market review or any special handling or labeling for nanoparticle products. What this leads to is nanoparticles inside of consumer products being improperly disposed of. When consumers use these products, first they put them into and onto their bodies, and then they rinse all the nanoparticles inside down the sink. This is pretty alarming. Why? First, silver nanoparticles in particular have been shown to be extremely toxic to living cells. And secondly, when consumers rinse these products down the sink, they then go into wastewater treatment plants where they aren't filtered out. They then go into nearby streams and aquatic environments where they kill the organisms living there and eventually circle back to our very own drinking water supply. All of these methods of releasing nanoparticles into the environment are extremely detrimental, and they all need to be curbed. Yet, when I looked for scientific articles and risk assessments about nanoparticles in the environment, I surprisingly found next to none. And this is beyond worrying, because the field of nanotechnology is expected to triple by the year 2021. This could lead to up to 12 million tons of silver nanoparticles being dumped into the environment every single year.
There are many routes of exposure to these different materials, whether they are primary source materials or true microplastics. We get exposed to them through what we ingest and what we put on our skin, because some nanoparticles are built into products. They are ingredients on the label, and most of them are not hidden, but some of them may be, and some of them may be contamination. Also, breathing. We breathe in millions of nanoparticles every day that have basically gone rogue in the air supply due to geoengineering. These particulates fall to the ground, and many scientists have done investigations as to what is really in these aerosols, and they do vary, but for sure we know there are tons of heavy metals. There are also biological material, and there are things like nanotubes and polymer fibers, Morgellons fibers, graphene, and some of the very same components we find in nanotechnology are released from these planes in the atmosphere. Some of them are for nefarious purposes. I've covered some of these environmental samples in my Substack, so check out what I found there. So, why are we suspicious that these fibers may in fact be technology and not just environmental waste? Well, in 2022, Dr. David Nixon was looking at the Comirnaty shots under the microscope and found these liquid crystal chip-like structures. And in this photo, he found a blue fiber that was near one of these structures. And then over the course of 48 hours, sitting on the slide, it sure seemed like this fiber was self-directed to insert itself into the other structure. Asking the question, is there something electronic happening here? I think blue is the most common color I've seen in these fibers and filaments besides clear, and unless there are like massive quantities of blue plastic tarps that have disintegrated into the environment and are contaminating everything, including medical supplies, I really think these are self-assembled nanomaterials. Once again, these can be natural or synthetic ingredients. Some of the same components we see in nanoplastics are like polyvinyl alcohol, polyethylene glycol, polyethylene, polyurethane. And then there are natural polymers made out of gelatin, collagen, alginate, that's algae or cellulose, or chitosan. And maybe some of you have heard of chitosan because it is made out of shellfish or crickets. And right now there's a big push for alternative proteins like insect protein, which includes cricket flour. And unfortunately, chitosan is not digestible, toxic. So why they want it to be a flour, I'm not so sure. It's been around for actually decades, and they just passed something in Europe saying they can add about 10% of cricket flour or insect flour to different baked goods in the stores without informing the public. So what is so nefarious about chitosan is not only is it toxic, but it does have electromagnetic properties. So you can understand why they use it in nanotechnology to perhaps help conduct electricity. So I don't think we should be eating crickets. I don't know about you. On the subject of things we should definitely not be eating, you absolutely positively have to read this article by Corey Lynn at corysdigs.com, where she's done an excellent report on Codex Alimentaris, which, if you don't know, that is part of the World Health Organization's Food and Agricultural Organization, which creates standards for the world's food supply and is absolutely dictating the need for nanotechnology, gene editing, genetic engineering, biotechnology, and insects into the food supply. Apparently, the edible insect market is expected to grow to 8 billion by 2030. And it looks like nano food and nanotechnology food is here to stay because there's quite a few industry books written about it. A lot of you have also heard about graphene and graphene contamination in different medical injections. Well, that is also a popular nanomaterial, incredibly powerful. It's incredibly flexible. It's incredibly strong. So it's used for lots of things. It's becoming very popular. Like I said, they could also use different metals. So they put those together to create different kinds of hydrogels. So there are these smart polymer hydrogels that scientists just love to play with because they do so many things. And you can see it's just this very transparent, flexible, aqueous, gel-like substance. And scientists love it because it has a lot of physiochemical and functional traits, including injectability into the body and rigidity or flexibility and tensile strength. It could be self-healing or self-repairing. It's transparent or could be made any color you would want it to be. And it's biocompatible with different organs in the body, supposedly. It can degrade, it can recycle, photothermal properties. It's flame retardant. And it has all these mechanical and electromechanical properties as well. It can be programmed to record information and go in a certain direction and energy harvest, energy from the body or other places, depending on what materials it's made out of. Now here in light field, you can see the hydrogel really clearly. It's snuggling up to this typical blue fiber in this dental anesthetic, and you can see it looks very gel-like. And I believe that this hydrogel is going to take over this fiber and actually help build it to be a larger structure. Here are a couple other examples of fibers in hydrogel. So hydrogels are used in the creation of synthetic biology and artificial organs. Hydrogel and nanoparticles are also very popular in cosmetics and cosmetic fillers. You can check out Dr. David Nixon's exploration of Botox under the microscope on his Substack article here. And also is used as a wound dressing. You'll see Band-Aids in the store that say hydrogel because it retains moisture. And here, look, now you can buy bioelectric bandages you can put on your wound, and electricity and batteries will help heal your wound. But what else is this electric bandage doing? Is it transmitting information? Is it receiving information? Is it conducting electricity in your body in a way that you don't want it to? And it's also used for bioimaging and biosensing. So it has a lot of different functions depending on what it's made out of. So what is synthetic biology besides just a synthetic organ? Well, we all have heard of genetic engineering by now, and they use that a lot in food products for the last 50 years. And synthetic biology has been actually around for 2 decades now as well. It's about designing and creating brand new organisms. So really, it's about playing God. You may have heard about gene editing and CRISPR-Cas9. It's a technology that was used in the recent COVID shots. And this company has a splashy brochure, and they're really proud of being able to empower scientists and innovators with the technology to rewrite life's code. You might have heard of cultured meat, and the culture is usually cultured in a petri dish from cancer cells because they reproduce really easily in the laboratory, cancer cells. So they do that with animal tissue from a live animal, typically the muscle tissue. And using these machines, they create really disgusting materials that they're calling food. But I certainly don't want to eat it. For another excellent report on biotech food and pharma food by Elsa von Hamlin on the Solari Report, please go to the link at the bottom. This video and report are behind a paywall on Solari, but they're well worth the investment. But I've also given you another link if you want to watch a video for free. What does all this biotechnology and synthetic biology and nanotechnology have to do with transhumanism and the fourth industrial revolution and human augmentation? Well, it has a lot to do with it because transhumanism is about improving humans to overcome any deficiencies that we have as a natural being on the planet. It's for the common good, you understand. But is it really? Is it for everyone, or is it just for some people? Because not everyone is going to go along with this. And is it really more about control, controlling humans at every scale? Because if we have free will, then we can't be controlled. It has to do with merging us with artificial intelligence. Maybe you've heard of Elon Musk's Neuralink, which is a brain chip in your head. These types of new technologies are always sold to the public as a kind of benefit for humanity. But DARPA has been working on neural implants for decades now. And nanotechnology can do a lot of this stuff on a much smaller scale from the inside out. So Musk is kind of like the poster child for transhumanism to make it look cool. All right, let's take a look at this strategic implications project by the Ministry of Defense in England, which is a military project for human augmentation. And it includes you and me and everyone without our consent. These people are very excited about this. They think it's evolution of humankind. It's basically the end of humankind as we know it. And there are these timelines of 2030, 2040, 2050, where they want people to be fully augmented by 2050. No going back. Does anybody here want any of that thrust upon them without them knowing that they're being neurostimulated or augmented? Your senses are being augmented, or you have a digital twin in another digital realm where they can manipulate you without your knowing or your consent? They admit that people may not openly accept that they're being augmented without their consent. Well, this may challenge or offend some religious views because transhumanism itself is a kind of a godless religion where want to be the gods themselves. And nanotechnology, nanoparticles, nanorobots, nanoblood are all part of this plan and are well underway, whether we like it or not.
Let's start with a quick breakdown of red blood cells. These tiny cells are responsible for transporting oxygen throughout the body. But what if they could do more? DARPA is working on enhancing these cells to
DoD has supported research for the development of a product called erythromer, which is a nanoscale synthetic polymer that contains purified human hemoglobin. Erythromer can be freeze-dried and stored at ambient temperatures for long periods of time. Researchers have used a variety of materials, including polymers and nanomaterials, to recreate the clotting function of platelets. Erythroplate is a synthetic nanoplatelet which can be administered intravenously to help promote clotting. DoD has researched other methods to improve the combat blood supply. For example, DARPA has worked with private industry to research a technique known as blood farming, which involves the growing of blood in a lab using umbilical cord stem cells.
My question is, are some of these nanoparticles and assembled structures that we see under the microscope, are they there to build synthetic biology and even synthetic blood cells without us knowing about it? Are we being experimented on? Well, apparently they've been working on synthetic blood since 1957, according to a paper. So they might have been working on it before that. And, they'll say that synthetic blood is for emergency purposes, for soldiers on the battlefield. But is there something else going on? Because how is it that there are people who haven't had any sort of medical intervention with blood or blood transfusions or injections, and their blood cells are showing up very unusual, sometimes not decomposing for even months. And the average lifespan of a red blood cell sitting on a microscope slide is maybe 15 minutes to a half an hour before it decomposes. Then we have instances of red blood cells appearing seemingly out of nowhere. The future of medicine is fusing with artificial intelligence. And there are some new terms for the medical industry: AI precision healthcare, customizing medicine just based on your individual DNA. So how do they get your DNA is another question. And should they have your DNA? And who has your DNA? And what are they doing with it? Well, by now you've probably heard about the Internet of Things and your smart home and artificial intelligence and how it's all in place to improve your life and make it more convenient. But what about the Internet of Bodies? What does that have to do with AI precision medicine? Have you ever heard of the IEEE? That's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Well, you probably haven't heard of them, but they are the ones who create the standards for wireless technology all over the world. Everything that we use, from computers to cell phones. This includes working with 5G and 6G towers and satellites. It includes your smart home and your smart appliances and your smart watch and your smart meter, and ultimately the smart grid and the cybersecurity of all of that. Everything that they're designing for a smart city. And a smart city is an urban area that uses digital technology to collect data about basically everything and everyone, basically the entire infrastructure of an area. And visual and audio surveillance uses artificial intelligence to track and collect data about everything and everyone, including you. Well, you might have heard that the acronym SMART actually stands for surveillance, monitoring, accounting, reporting, and tracking. But that could just be a conspiracy theory. And in a smart city, you are a digital citizen. Well, what they don't tell you in this happy, clappy promotional video is that they're also in charge of creating the standards for the Internet of Bodies. Do you see that 802 up there? That's you, 802.15.6. Well, it's not just you, but it's your local area network, and your wireless body area network, and your medical body area network. Here, you can read all about your role in wireless communications. So you see why they got you hooked on your phone and your wireless earbuds and your gaming and your smartwatch and all of your electronic devices. And all these happy, clappy, happy people are just having a happy time with all their devices. It also has to do with wirelessly monitoring your body. So take note in all these graphics where it doesn't just say devices outside the body, but it says implanted devices or sensors in the body. This is the intranet body nano network. Here's an illustrative design of the Internet of Bodies nano AI system, where there are nanosensors and nanoreceivers and nanotransmitters actually in your body. And then that information gets transferred wirelessly to someone somewhere over the internet who's monitoring your healthcare. Well, surely these are just theoretical schematics, right? What they'd like to do in the future? Well, this may all seem like science fiction, but I assure you, it's already happening. IEEE paper from Dr. Akildiz is from 2010, and believe me, he's a really big guy in this field. Listen very carefully to what he said in 2023.
And then here, in terms of bio-nano things, these are for the health applications. I did also a lot of research on that the last 15 years. Bio-nanoscale machines, but these are for the, injecting into the body and always monitoring the health problems. And that is also really going really well, like with these COVID vaccines, it's going that direction. These mRNAs are nothing than small scale, nanoscale machines, right? They are programmed and they're injected. And then Internet of nanoscale things. So those will be part of 7G and beyond.
So everybody's individual body is its own network, collecting data based on the nanosensors that are in the blood and the fat and under the skin and perhaps in the bacteria in your gut. And they're sending all that information somewhere and ultimately wirelessly delivering drugs to your body. Some of these nanostructures we're finding under the microscope, well, could some of them be these biosensors that are looking for pathogens and looking for disease? And are they transmitting that information somewhere? Remember when we were looking at hydrogel and all the various polymers that are in nanoparticles and also in microplastics? And all the papers on hydrogel sensors and the applications of hydrogels and all the miracle things that it can do, including conduct electricity. The IEEE Internet of Things Journal has an article on routing for the interbody nano network, using nanonodes and nano routers that are in your arteries and veins flowing through your blood. Here's a video that shows how these hydrogel microbots may work in the body. In this case, it's for medical applications, but you could see how it could be used for other things.
Incorporating live cells in a synthetic three-dimensional scaffold is critical for tissue engineering, and achieving this in real time via a self-propelling micro-robot allows for future applications in remotely guided cell therapy, including spinal cord injury treatment and site-directed drug delivery. In Advanced Materials, Dr. Sarvesh Kumar Srivastava and his co-workers from the Technical University of Denmark's Idun Center of Drug Delivery describe their thread-like radical polymerization-based micro-robot or trapbot, which can capture and transport live cells to a desired location. Much like a spider weaving a web, these microbots can spit out thread-like gel to trap living cells and incorporate them in their hollow microcylinder. This microcylinder is about 200 micrometers in diameter. It also contains the ingredients for the cell-trapping gel, which creates a long, thread-like structure, while nickel layer allows for magnetic guidance. Once a staple of science fiction, thanks to this research, microbots can perform a variety of functions, including tissue grafts, in the near future.
So it's important whenever they say in the near future, that probably means it's already happened, right?
Now, one of the major players in the transhumanist movement is Ray Kurzweil, who you may know as being the author of The Singularity, and that refers to when humans will merge with AI, and basically AI will take over and we won't actually need humans anymore. Ray is also known for working for Google, and also, like all transhumanists, he wants to live forever. So check out this 2012 edited video of Ray talking to another transhumanist named Robert Freitas, who is a nanobot designer. And believe me, these guys are very serious.
My name is Robert Freitas. I am the Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for Molecular Manufacturing. I am a nanorobot theoretician. I think that the confluence of artificial intelligence and nanotechnology inevitably leads to something that we would all recognize as the singularity. I think the average person should care about nanotechnology because it is the most important technology that will be developed in the 21st century. In fact, you could almost call the 21st century the century of nanotechnology, just as you might have called the 20th century perhaps the century of electricity or automobiles or something like that. It is basically a game-changing technology. It's going to change everyone's lives in almost every way that you can imagine. But after that, they will have to think about it, and they will want to think about it because it will be so helpful to them.
One idea that I wrote about was to actually replace the nucleus itself with a little nanorobot that would basically act like DNA. What's the feasibility of something like that?
At some point, we start getting into the questions of what does it mean to be human? What is human? If you have 9% of your body replaced by machines, are you still a human or are you something else?
You mentioned nanorobots going into the brain and actually interacting with our biological neurons where they could monitor or influence the activity that goes on in the brain. And these will be computerized, so that introduces a concern about software problems like software viruses or software that would monitor what's going on in your brain or actually influence it.
I'm sure there will be cases in the future where that happens long before we get to nanorobots. I expect that by the time nanorobots are deployed, which will be sometime perhaps in the 2020s or the 2030s, we will have a whole set of laws in place, regulations. There will be things you can and cannot do, and that's how we will deal with that.
So first of all, what's the feasibility of self-replication in the nanotechnology world?
There is certainly possible for them to be able to replicate. As a general principle, you do not want to put self-replicating nanorobots inside the human body. I suppose not everybody agrees with me on that, but that is the way I think that we can best guarantee safety. If the nanorobots are able to replicate inside the human body, that means they are using some component of the human body as food, and we don't want them to be doing that. We want them to be going in and performing a therapeutic task and then coming back out again. Even in the case where you have an augmentation scenario where you're permanently installing nanorobots inside your body, you would still, even if you had them able to repair, you wouldn't want them to be able to reproduce. For the very reason that you described, they could get out of control, somebody could hack into them.
So if there's, let's say, nanofactories can take an information file and create an entity, and if one of those entities that could be created, or one type of entity, is a self-replicating structure of some kind, then that would be a very dangerous file to create. How do we prevent a terrorist or someone who's bent on destruction from creating such a self-replicating system, given that responsible practitioners will follow the ethical guidelines, but irresponsible ones won't?
In the future, there will be some acts of abuse, there will be some terrorist acts, because that's what humans do. Have satellite surveillance looking for heat signatures, because nanorobots generate heat when they work. And you need to have a method of sampling the environment on a regular basis. So we will send out devices which will constantly be sampling the dirt, the air, the trees, in some cases even living things, and examining what nanorobots are there, characterizing them, and reporting them back to some central monitoring agency.
Some people talk about death giving meaning to life. So what's your view about the role of death, and do we need death?
I have no patience for people who say that death gives meaning to life. I believe that life gives meaning to life. And I believe that our intellectual pursuits, our relationships with people, those things are what give the most meaning to life, and you can only experience those through life. Death is something that is an end. It's an end to life. It's an end to progress. It's an end to thoughts. It's something to be cured. I have a message for my fellow baby boomers. Aging is a disease. It's a curable disease. Nanomedicine is the cure for that disease.
Now look, I don't mean to scare people. I don't mean to be a scaremonger. And honestly, I don't know what a lot of these things we're finding in the blood and in food and medicine and in water and environmental samples and the different nanostructures and plastic polymer things that I'm finding really are. But I'm trying to put the pieces together. All right, everyone, so this is what we're up against. And these people, if you can even call them people, are extremely serious about this agenda. The propaganda is thick, the social engineering is thick, psychological conditioning is thick, the mind control is thick, the infinite funding is there, and technology is established and still progressing. The infrastructure is already in place. And the universities with their biological labs, and the cities and the countries and their politicians and their minions, and the United Nations and all of their agendas are all on board with this. Think of how many decades they've conditioned us. They've made robots and technology and genetics cool and sexy, fashionable, and even cute. And technological progress seemingly unavoidable and necessary even. Their goal is for you to want it and even ask for it, beg for it. Subconsciously, they've been degrading you, humiliating you, and dehumanizing you. They are manipulating you and they are using you. Have you figured out yet that transgenderism is really transhumanism? And eugenics. Eugenics goes back a very long time. It's part of controlling birth and controlling who gives birth and to what. And the end of not only sex, and gender, but humanity itself. They want you to willingly relinquish your body, control over your own body, your mind, your humanity, what you eat, a relationship with the earth and all that's natural, your genetics, your children, your ability to have children, your spirit, your God-given divinity, and your sovereignty.
I highly recommend research on these subjects in this book, this brand new book by Alana Freeland, who is a brilliant author. This is her fourth book on this subject, and this is the one to get. It's called The Geoengineered Transhuman, The Hidden Technologies of HARP, Chemtrails, 5G, 6G, Nanotechnology, Synthetic Biology, and the Scientific Effort to Transform Humanity. It is packed with incredible research.
To understand technocracy and transhumanism, I highly recommend this book by Patrick Wood, and COVID-19 Psychological Operations and the War for Technocracy with David Hughes. And you can see some excellent articles by these authors on Propaganda in Focus and the OmniWar Symposium, and the next OmniWar Symposium, which is coming up on April 26th. Although it has nothing to do with microscopy, you do not want to miss it. And please watch part 2 of this overview video next.
You can check out the other investigations of different
Samples and
products that I've looked at under the microscope. So please subscribe and support my work at unhackableanimal@substack.com.
so don't despair and be a deer in the headlights. Empower yourself. And remember to be unhackable.